Okay, welcome back, guys. This is part 3, Financial Management, Chapter 9, Stocks and Valuation. So we are turning our attention now to something different. It's non-constant growth stock. So, for example, think of a new company that has just had an IPO. It's growing rapidly. First couple of years it's growing at maybe 10, 20, 30%, and after some point it penetrates the market. It goes off into the sunset, if you will. It stops growing. It plateaus, if you will, maybe to 5% growth. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here, a company that has expanded growth up front, on the front end, and then it sort of pares down to a slower growth in the subsequent years. But we still we have to use another, another type of model if we want to figure out the price of stock today, or at any given time for that matter. But again, we're using PO, if you will. We're looking at stock growth, dividend growth out into the future. Okay, that changes at some point, okay, and then grows at a different rate. But then we need to bring all those payments back to the present to see what that stock value is worth. So, a couple of terms. Again, the required return, okay, is this R. Let's say that's 10%. G is a growth. Year for years 1 and 2. Growth years for subsequent years following that, years 3, 4, and 5 thereafter, is at 5%. And we also know the dividend paid today. Again, think of it this way. I received $1.25 DO. I sold it to you, one of you guys in class, and now you're holding the stock. So we have to use this DO as a benchmark, starting point to come up with the subsequent dividend amounts. So again, here at this point, I would absolutely encourage you to put together some timeline grid that we've done in class. So again, DO is here, D1 the first year, dividend 2, dividend 3, dividend 4, 5, etc. We'll see how many dividend points we have to make based on the problem. And PO is the price, PO is the same price point at DO, P1, P2, P3, P4, P5. The other piece we need to look at, the growth rate, 20%, as I said, for years 1 and 2. Here, this is the starting point of year 3. It scales back. The growth drops down to 5%. So this is into the 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year. Okay, just remember these hash marks. This is the end of year 1, the end of year 2, which is the beginning of year 3, end of year 3, beginning of year 4, end of year 4, etc. Okay, I think we've gone over that in class. The important point we need to make here, when it crosses over from 20 to 5, okay, this point here is called the horizon point. Okay, and think of that when it switches over, it stops at 20% and now drops down to 5%. It's a horizon. If you look out, the horizon just goes on forever. You can't see the stopping point. Well, that's why we call that the horizon point. It just goes 5% continuously. Okay, so again, when you read the problem, lay out a time grid like this. It will make your life a lot easier. and the problem more understandable. So we have 5 steps that I've put up. 5 steps to come up with the problem to this. Step 1, find the horizon point. Okay, that's the place where the growth changes over. From, in our case here, it switched from 20% to 5%. So indicate that, find that, make a note of it. Then part 2 is we want to calculate all the dividends, including 1 year beyond the horizon point. So in the previous problem is D0 was given, DO. So we'd want to find D1, D2, and D3. Okay, the horizon point fell at D2, so we want to go 1 year after the horizon point. So calculate those dividends at those growth rates. Okay, we're going to calculate the price at the horizon point, and that I'll show you how to do that. Okay, step 4 is discount all the amounts back to PO or DO, that place, that first point. Okay, calculate, discount everything back to that point. And we can do that by finding the net present value of all those amounts. Okay, put those into your cash flow formula in your calculator. We're going to use R, okay, the required rate R. That will be, in essence, used for the interest. So on your calculator, the R, the amount that's given, that will be your interest. So the problem here, okay, we were given DO is $1.25. Remember, we found the horizon point. Here's 20%, 20% here, 5, 5, and 5. Okay, this is where it crosses over. So that's a horizon point. Okay, so we can find, so step 1, find all the dividends. $1.25 at 20% growth. At 20% growth, now it switches over to 5%, so $1.80 at 5% is $1.89. Okay, you can stop here. We don't need to calculate these. We won't need those for the equation. So we have this, call that one cash flow, this a cash flow, this a cash flow, etc. So next step is to find the price at the horizon where this growth changes over, because that's where it turns into basically a constant growth problem like we did earlier. Okay, so the price at P2 is going to be, remember, we always look forward 1 period for the dividend. So P2 is 1 dividend ahead, which is D3, over the required minus G. Okay, and we were given those amounts. The required was 10%, that was given from the problem. The G is the G, not the 20% in these periods, but when it crosses over 5%. That's the growth rate we're going to use here to come up with the expected price at this point. Again, you're projecting out, you're forecasting, extrapolating out to come up approximately what would the price be with all those conditions. Okay, so P2 is going to be D3, dividends at the 3rd period, so it's 1, 2, 3. $1.89 over. The required was 10%. The growth rate at that point is only 5%. So if we plug all that in, P2, price 2, remember, is the dividend, $1.89 over the required minus the growth. Figure all that out. The price is $37.80. That's just the price, this amount. But we also have a dividend amount at that point. Okay? Dividend point at D2 is $1.80. This dividend is used only to calculate the price at P2. We go forward one. That's once we figured out the price, you don't worry about that. Okay, so that's the price. D2 is $1.80. Add those two amounts up, and you come up with a cash flow at that point. $39.60. And it looks like that's about 10 minutes, so let's stop here and we will finish up this whole chapter on the next video. See you then.